Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another panel of the Digi Summit 2021. My name is Anzar Saqib. Now, reimagining the future. Now, who would have thought that it would take a global pandemic and an economic crisis to see how we can reimagine our future on the planet? The role of mobile technology has never been more important than during this pandemic. The mobile ecosystem is absolutely vital in low and middle income countries, in particular, where connectivity and digital services can help inform citizens design appropriate responses to the crisis and preserve their livelihoods. The GSMA is committed to supporting its members and partners through technical assistance, capacity building, and best practice sharing. Mobile technology will play a crucial role as governments look to reinvigorate their economies and build a better, more inclusive society. With mobile networks vital to economic recovery and future crisis resilience, the industry needs a supportive, environment-friendly policy framework to drive infrastructure deployments, fuel sustainable growth, and trigger a green and digital transformation across the region, which is why CXO Global has put together a beautiful global digital summit that is particular to this panel where we're going to be talking about reimagine the future. And we've got a very esteemed panel with us today. We've got Mr. Asif Salim. He's the Senior Director, Banking Innovation Advisor, Japan and Asia Pacific at Oracle. Mr. Khurram Rahat, who's the Senior VP at North Bay Solutions. Mr. Haris Mahmood, he's the CEO of Universal Service Fund. Mr. Mohsen Ali, the Chief Executive Officer at Inbox Technologies. And Mr. Yusuf Hussain, the Head Venture Capital at HPL. I'm very excited to talk to these extraordinary gentlemen. Welcome to the panel. Now I'm going to request you, whenever I start asking you questions, just mute yourself, unmute yourself briefly for that time period. So starting off, my first question is going to be for Mr. Mohsen Ali. Now, sir, due to the emergent nature of the technologies, how is Inbox supporting businesses to be agile in this digital services age?
Thank you, Anza. Thank you for having me in the CXO Global, great initiative. A very important question, I would say. So the time is changing and, we have to change accordingly. COVID has changed each and everything in front of us. The technology adoption, which we're talking about, which will take maybe decades, that has taken maybe years or months. Inbox is trying to be agile enough. So a little bit about Inbox. So we started off as a box company, as a system assembler 2 decades back. And in early 2000, when there was a need of a local assemblies set up in Pakistan, we tried to fill that gap and beat the international players like the HPs and the Dells of the world at that time, and moved on. The agility or the transformation which you're talking about, that is in the DNA of Inbox. So from that point onward, we try to tap the enterprise market. We try to transform a lot of government organizations, public sector organizations. So few examples, like there was a need of urban transport system in Pakistan. So Inbox was the first company who jumped in and helped government and deployed automated fare collection system, a passenger information system, or a bus scheduling system. When it came to the cloud setups in Pakistan, again, Inbox was leading and pioneer in setting up a federal government cloud data center for NTC. And when it comes to the complicated solution, maybe the packet core solutions, or maybe helping telecom or the regulator in many aspects, Inbox is at the forefront. And when COVID hit, lot of my colleagues or the industry might have no idea about it. Just to share a quick story, when COVID hit in Pakistan, we have been approached by the government, by the esteemed organizations for the help. Inbox jumped in, and as a CSR, Inbox developed this COVID smart lockdown app, and the platform, the resource management system, and each and everything aspect for the NCOC eventually. So it was a CSR activity. We don't, we don't claim it, but we help government in a right manner wherever the requirement is there. So we are trying to transform ourselves. We are trying to transform government. We are trying to transform our customer wherever the requirement is. And the agility is built in our DNA, and we are trying to be there.
Right, that sounds pretty impactful. My next question is going to be for Mr. Yusuf Hussain. So even in the face of unseemingly or seemingly unfavorable macro and microeconomic factors, the focus for financial services was embedding resilience, stability, and reimagining the future of finance in the new normal. How did HPL tackle unprecedented changes to consumer behavior, preferences, wants, and needs? Would love to hear your side. Right, I think there seems to be an error with his connection, so I'm going to pass on the question to Mr. Khurram Rahat. I'm going to ask him a question of his own, and we can come back to Mr. Yusuf Hussain later. So, some companies are close to a collapse. Their business models are revealed as unsustainable. They rely on outdated single service activity that is easily exposed and disrupted. Do you think all of this creates a fertile ground for commerce-led sustainable innovation that transforms business models and behaviors? How can an organization respond in the face of constant disruption?
Thank you very much for having me on the forum. And very interesting question. Obviously, this pandemic actually has, all of us have witnessed what we've been talking about. We've heard in the past how the dinosaurs vanished from this globe, and there've always been talk about catastrophes, and we have witnessed one. And it's interesting that because I think there've been a saying in last decade or so that it's not the big which will eat the small, but it is the agile organization which will overtake those organizations which are relatively bigger and are less reactive to change. And we've witnessed that. We've seen some very big names vanish. Some of the industries really got badly hit, travel and transportation, hospitality business. And then those organizations which were there in terms of, traditional brick and mortar kind of operations, they face challenges. And we have seen some very interesting transformation. So if we look at our own backyard, so the way we've seen organizations like Food Panda, and we've seen organizations like Airlift, and then a lot of our retail outlets move very quickly to the e-commerce and transform their business and really move from a point where some of them were kind of doing ride-hailing services, and they started into the e-commerce or home delivery services. Those are very, very interesting examples. We as North Bay obviously were quite focused in the Americas business, and realizing that Americas was the biggest geographical area which got impacted in the early days. We actually decided to transform. We decided to diversify. We actually, it helped us kind of make our journey to become a global company kind of leapfrog. And that's what it is all about. A lot of time people say prepare for the inevitable. You should be ready to make changes. But the real test comes in when something happens, how quickly you adapt, how quickly you transform, how quickly you learn, and then you start looking at taking opportunities from whatever the disasters are. And there are so many examples of organizations which have actually kind of vanished in last 2 years. But then there are so many silver linings, so many organizations which have really come out shining, and especially in the area of moving away from the traditional IT data centers to move towards cloud or move towards e-commerce. That has accelerated. And I think what we were all seeing, that the move towards cloud by the world, and especially our part of the world, would be probably was another 5 or 10 years away. That has kind of accelerated. And that's the kind of overall mindset which I see happening across organizations. And you see those which have transformed, those which have learned, are now doing excellent business.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Mr. Asif Salim from Oracle. So, what possibilities and opportunities do you think will come with this pandemic driven fast track technological advancements for both people and for the enterprise?
Thank you, Anza, for having me over. I hope you can hear me well. Couple of things. I think it's a very interesting question. I'll structure this question into two fronts. One is people and one is on the enterprise front. So when I talk about on the people front, I feel, as some of my co-panelists talked about, how digital has become mainstream, how pandemic has basically pushed us towards basically digital becoming mainstream in Pakistan and rest of Southeast Asia. I think the next wave that will hit is basically data becoming mainstream. Because see, one of the things that people will realize on the people front is that digital is the foundation of the infrastructure, and how do you kind of take it to the next level is that how you consume and use data to really understand micro moments of a consumer. I think that's very important, right? And I think that's where there'll be a lot of consumer expectation, right? So if you look at how traditionally banks used to give, mortgages or personal loans, a lot of this was primarily about kind of achieving a certain milestone. But I think all of that will change, right? And it's all about, how do you kind of make sure about making instant service fulfillment. I think that would be something that would pretty much be expected, in 2 to 3 minutes, how you could help disburse a loan, which would traditionally take, a couple of days for this to happen. One thing which I also kind of see, which I think Khurram Saab also talk about, is 24/7 availability, right? I think that will become extremely important. Brands will be expected to kind of be 24/7 available. From an individual perspective, customer perspective, customers will truly and surely will become, kind of the mainstream. There'll be a lot of options available. I think with globalization and with digitization, what we have seen that the outreach for all these consumers have become very, very easy. They have a lot of options. In brick and mortar setups, it was very difficult to scale. But when it comes to digital, modern cloud ecosystem infrastructures, that's become really easy. We also see there'll be a significant shift towards, green, sustainable finance options, because, I'm seeing there's a big shift that is happening on the global landscape. Almost 65% of the world population is digitally active today. But then there's a big change happening in terms of the average age of these global consumers. There's a lot of young people who are expected to enter modern ecosystem, which will kind of drive a really new way of doing business. We've already seen the amount of kind of successes that have happened on the fintech stuff in the last 5-6 years. I think this will triple down. There'll be a lot of options available from an individual perspective, and I'll see new alternative business models kind of emerge out of this, new partnership driven solutions. Because one thing the world will also realize, that there's no one size fit all. You'll have to co-innovate, you'll have to partner at an individual level. On the enterprise level, Anza, I feel that the enterprises will be challenged, having required to keep the system up and running 24/7. It can be really taxing at some times, but that would be the minimal level expectations. There'll be a lot of focus on getting the smaller stuff right. Historically, we were always kind of curtailed with big problems. How do you kind of make sure that you have this big solution that is implemented? I think all those big challenges might be solved for, but there'll be a lot of small problems which will have to be dealt differently. And I think that's that small stuff which will truly differentiate in terms of how the enterprises react in a certain situation. I would also see the introduction of new modern enterprise architectures, which would be not only helping the organization scale both horizontally and vertically, they will be very innovation driven. I think innovation cannot be a side function anymore. It has to be a mainstream, a really mainstream. And in fact, almost every job in the company would be driven by that. I talked a little bit about green sustainable options. I think there'll be a lot more focus around, how could you come up with new innovative solutions that can offset carbon credits. There'll be a lot of focus around, people giving it back to the environment. They'll be absolutely conscious around how to make it happen. And last thing, one thing we've also seen happen in the last couple of years, especially during pandemic, as I think one of my co-panelists actually talked about, that there'll be a lot of company that went home. We will see a real fast track emergence of that. Either you come up with a solution that will scale fast and within a matter of months and years, it will be really global, or, you might have to go home. So this would be my guidance on an individual and enterprise level, Ansar.
Right. So it's either go digital or go home, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harris, are you with us available? Right, sir. Most welcome. Sir, my question to you is that when we hear about the USF, it talks about grandeur and talks about a lot of impactful work on ground. Now, we do know that unfortunately what the pandemic did bring forward was the realization that there is a lot of digital inequality and digital divide, when it comes to connectivity, whether it's businesses going online or schools going online. Connectivity became a huge problem. Now, you've recently signed an MOU with Jazz as well. So what does the USFC when we talk about reimagining the future?
Okay. Thank you, Anja, for taking me on this panel, and it's a privilege to be part of it. And I'm glad that you raised a question about digital strategy. I'll try to explain in a few minutes. Universal Service Fund is a company made by the Ministry of IT and Telecom to break the digital divide. As you know, that Pakistan's total population, 60% is in the rural communities, and the rest are in metropolitan cities. And a lot of operators like Jazz, Telenor, Bluefone, Pixel, their commercial case is not very viable in the rural areas. So that's why this fund has been created, so subsidies can be provided to those areas and connectivity can be provided there. This pandemic has exposed not only Pakistan telecom infrastructure, but in fact, most of the world. So previously when we talk about connectivity, like connecting people through voice, but I guess this pandemic has accelerated the demand of data. So because a lot of people wanted data to be there so they can use it for e-commerce, e-health, e-finance, e-education, more than than the other things in the days of pandemic. So what Universal Service Fund is doing is not only providing connectivity, but is also trying to provide meaningful connectivity, which means that anyone who is in the rural community, for example, in an area like Turbat or in Chitral or in the interior Sindh or southern Punjab, so through meaningful connectivity, they can utilize the e-street, whatever is provided in that area. So if they want, they can use e-health. If they want, they can use financial inclusion like Jazz Cash or Telenor's Easy Paisa. So to bring a digitally inclusive society, that's the main objective of the Universal Service Fund. You talked about the MOUs. So basically, I'll just give you a snapshot that Universal Service Fund has contracted approximately 87 billion worth of project since this inception. And we were formed in 2007, so in the last 14 years. You'll be pleasantly surprised that in the last 3 years, Universal Service Fund has contracted over 35 billion. So 33% of approximately, 35% of approximately since inception, USF has signed contracts with different operators to provide meaningful connectivity. And another important factor in connectivity which we discovered in the past was that our BTS sites are connected to radio, microwave frequency, rather than the fiber. So, if you could talk about the numbers, less than 10% of the BTS sites are connected to the fiber. And in China, it's opposite. In Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they've got 25, 30, 50, 45% of connectivity through fiber, the towers I'm talking about. So Universal Service Fund has made a special program taking the fiber to union councils. So if I give you a bit of a snapshot, in Pakistan, there are 6,000 union councils. And out of 3,000 union councils has fiber connected, rest do not have any fiber connected. So we are working, in the next 3 years, our target is to connect 3,000 union councils with the fiber. So once the fiber is connected, connected with that union councils, then you will see the meaningful connectivity in the rural community. So if you want to talk about something in Tier and you want to use the e-education, yes, you will be able to do that. So this is on the infrastructure side. But I think we also need to work on the ecosystem in providing the tablets and the smartphones and also affordable connectivity so people from rural background or from marginalized community can get connected.
Absolutely.
So that is something which I wanted to talk about.
Sure. So could you repeat the last line, please?
I was saying, we can provide infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and can provide the basis for it. But I think the whole infrastructure ecosystem around that needs also to be worked so the connectivity can be provided from rural communities to the urban communities.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And when you speak about, for instance, e-education, and we're talking about the digital infrastructure that needs to be put in place, and the need for, let's say, tablets or computers and mobile devices, we have to also look into the financial aspect of things and what kind of flexibility or inclusion we're offering to the people that are present in such areas. And for that, I'm going to ask my next question to Mr. Hussain from HPL. So I hope you're with us this time.
Yes, I am. Please go ahead.
Lovely. So even in the face of seemingly unfavorable macro and microeconomic factors, the focus for financial services was embedding resilience, stability, and reimagining the future of finance in the new normal. So how did HPL tackle unprecedented changes to consumer behavior, preferences, wants, and needs?
Well, I cannot speak on the behalf of HPL as a whole, but I can speak on behalf of HPL VC Fund, which I had. And there, what we're looking at is that the future of banking and financial services is very different. Wherever there's a customer touch point, be that in healthcare, be that in travel, education, or what have you. Agar aap kirayana store hai, so it could be lending services there. That is the customer touch point. तो जहां तक HPL VC फंड का ताल्लुक है, हम ये देख रहे हैं कि fintech, financial services, be that lending, payments, mortgage, insurance, what have you. And then number two, we are looking at these kind of non-financial verticals, like I mentioned, travel, education, health, so on. And then number three, we are looking at personal financial services such as tax filing, such as bookkeeping, because if you have tax data, you have data which can drive your lending. And number four, we are looking at enterprise, which could be a company supplying cybersecurity specialists, artificial intelligence specialists,
could be a company looking at customer experience across all digital forums. तो ये हमारे चार. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you. For the next question, I would insist that you please switch on your camera for next time. Thank you, sir. And now we're going to move back to Mr. Mohsen Ali from Inbox Technologies. So 8 in 10 businesses have fast-tracked digital transformation and 79% are reinventing their business model as a result of the disruption caused by the pandemic. There has never been a better time to rethink and reimagine what the future workforce looks like for your company. How do you take this as a challenge or an opportunity for your company?
Thank you, Anza. So this pandemic has changed the overall work environment. It forced us to work from home. So the overall dynamics changed very abruptly. So the territories or the boundary is finished. It's a global territory now, which is available to everyone, and it is accessible. While sitting in Pakistan, you can work for Europe, work for US or Middle East, which was a problem previously. Like the virtual conference, which used to be very difficult or odd thing, now we are having these kind of virtual conferences everywhere.
Yeah, and I think
I
CXO has done a commendable job at these virtual conferences.
Absolutely. I think credit goes to CXO and his team. And this has changed the dynamics very swiftly. And the way we are moving ahead, there is an opportunity and there's a problem. While working in Pakistan, you can work in the global territory. However, the customer which is sitting away from Pakistan, they are attracting your workforce here. So to compete with the global players, you have to sharpen your skills. So the workforce which is available in Pakistan, what they need to do is they need to be at par with the global players. So there are certain key areas where they need to work very quickly, where they need to sharpen their skills. So World Economic Forum came up with 5 different areas, and they are focusing that in 2025. These are the skills which will be required most. It covers the analytical skills, analytical and thinking skills, active learning skills, complex problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, and the creativity. So these are the, I would say common or basic skills which everyone has. And as a leadership, on a leadership role, it comes on our shoulders. We should give a environment to our people, to our resources, to our communities and the societies, and to help them to enable these skills as early as possible. The skills I'm talking about, these are not the technical skills. These are the skills which we need to inculcate in our culture, within my organization, within your organization, with our colleagues' organizations. And the way we're going to build, in a way we can strengthen our society, where we can be standing up front in the global players. How we are doing it, so just to give you a crisp examples, so training is one of the core area very close to my heart. So within our organization, we are focusing a lot on the training part by helping our resources to sharpen their skills by getting the latest technologies. So a lot of tools are available. So rather than going in that discussion, and then we are trying to work very closely with the academia. So the workforce or the future workforce, which would be available to us or to the industry, we need to make sure they should be able to tackle with this global phenomena or the global forces, I would say. And they should, while working or while studying at the university, they should be able to learn these technologies. There's a technical part and there's a soft skills. So with the combination of both, I believe they can do it. And as an industry leader, we are trying to inculcate that culture with the universities and trying to work very closely with the academia. Hopefully, it will address the resource requirement in the market, which everyone is facing nowadays, and it will be addressed very soon.
Absolutely, and that's great that you're actually focusing on industry academia linkages. And let me reiterate that these days, the future of work, where the focus globally is not just on university students, but students as early as the early learning years, where they're not just learning about English separately or math separately or science, but actually focusing on STEAM and a lot of emphasis on making them future ready. So not just in terms of like for example, right now we have professions like data scientists, but in the future we have to look at drone architects, or for instance, look at AI and ethics, that side of things as well. So a lot of exciting opportunities as well for the future. And like I said, it's commendable that you guys are already focusing on connecting with the academia. My next question is going to be for Mr. Khurram Rahat. So, with the suite of solutions and the industry verticals that North Bay addressed to, I would specifically like to ask about innovations to take lead in healthcare and education to modernize these sectors from the technology perspective.
So, I'll talk about education first. Obviously, we've talked about e-learning over this pandemic. It became a necessity. One very important aspect, and that's where North Bay is these days focusing a lot on, is that in addition to having classrooms or e-learning, there is a great need for, especially now that the students are unable to go physically to the universities, although it's now started, that they get access to proper career counseling, sitting at home. How do you decide what career you want to adapt, what is your compatibility? And that's a big void. And when you come to talking to the career counselors, or even when you talk to the HR people, almost 90% plus believe that, a lot of times students or graduates or people, professionals who are not working well in the fields is because of the fact that they, got into career fields, they got into professional fields where they were not really motivated, they were not tuned for, they got the marks, they somehow the other graduated, but at the end of the day, that's where their mind and heart wasn't, and as a result you see mediocre performances. And a lot of time you say that this student was brilliant during his academic career, but what has happened to him now? He's and normally people attribute it to being burnout. So I believe that's where a lot of focus is towards career counseling, guiding young professionals and students in the right area. And that's where we are partnering with organizations where we are kind of providing this AI-driven career counseling service to students as well as young professionals. So that's one area, and that's where we see, in addition to e-learning, this e-counseling or career counseling, which is available again 24/7, it becomes very important and very crucial, especially with this current change where we have seen disruption in the exams, disruption in the academic areas. So that's one area, if I talk about education. Then coming to the healthcare, obviously, there is a lot of focus these days around e-healthcare, where the doctors get onto a Zoom call or a WhatsApp and try to remotely, advise patients. But then a lot of it is being done based on what the patient tells about his or her condition, and the doctors try to assess the situation. And that's where I think there is an accelerated need for what you call wearables or IoT driven solutions, which can actually help. So for example, we've done in US a project where as a result of heart patients wearing devices which are providing their vital signs to the healthcare professionals, you're able to provide early warning signals not only to the patient but the care providers which can actually do timely intervention, advise the patient whether to take rest or take some medication, or reach out to a nearby emergency center to get first aid. So those kind of, I think, uh, interventions or those kind of innovations are now becoming more and more a necessity. We've seen a lot of research around stem cell. We've use of technology for trying to break down and unravel the myths around DNA. But I think more practical uses around IoT and IoT driven solutions to provide medical care to the patients is becoming a necessity of the day. And I think that's where we are seeing a lot more happening, and not just from healthcare perspective, but I think IoT is becoming something which is no longer a fashion statement, but actually a necessity.
Absolutely, sir. And case in point, that's where we monitor my vitals all day long, and it's connected to obviously the doctor as well. And it starts early, and I'm so glad that millennials these days are more and more invested in the E side of healthcare. So, positive news. Thank you for the response. My next question is going to be for Mr. Asif Salim at Oracle. So Oracle has been in business for decades doing the mission critical work that keeps businesses and organizations around the world and across industries up and running. How does Oracle ensure to support businesses with this fast evolving pace of digital transformation?
Okay. This this anybody at Oracle can answer very easily because again, Oracle spends a lot of time, energy, resources. Close to about $6 billion each year we are spending on research, extensive research. This is basically product research, industry research, product development research, basically to try and understand where the markets are heading towards, where our consumers are heading towards. We are primarily a B2B company, but we do spend a lot of time on collaborating with the tech ecosystem, partner ecosystem, say it be collaborating with the big four consulting companies, tech partners. A lot of work has been done on the tech accelerators, right? Oracle has invested a lot in the Oracle startup accelerators. We've got close to about 10 startup accelerators globally, where we are hosting a lot of new age startups. We're co-innovating them. We've got centers where we're co-innovating with them. That's one thing which I think is key for us to continue to innovate. The second thing is there's a lot of focus on self-service, right? Oracle is always learning environment. You would be able to achieve anything and everything the way you kind of self-serve and learn around the modern technology that is available. So it's all up to you. That's another thing which I think plays a very important role. I think the third thing, which is also a very strong realization on the Oracle front, and this is where I would kind of say a new Oracle is emerging, which is very service focused, very consumption oriented, very customer centric. We do believe in coming up with end-to-end solutions, partnering with industry. There's a huge focus at Oracle around industry, right? How do you kind of create new modern solutions that are industry driven, solving for problems all the way from origination to better service management, better sales management, better marketing, and kind of also kind of making sure that you have the end-to-end ecosystem around fraud management, AML, and so much so. I'm just talking about banking for now, but then there are so many other industries where we're extensively focused towards, two industries where I see there'll be a lot more focus moving forward for Oracle is financial services, and then on the other side is the communications, right? There's a lot of opportunity in that area as well. So I think these are some of the initiatives which kind of help us at Oracle to continue to learn, co-innovate, and partner with our customers as well as the larger ecosystem.
Absolutely. Thank you for that response. Sir, you mentioned something very interesting, and we have someone from a bank as well, Mr. Hussain. Sir, my question to you is, to successfully reimagine the future of banking and financial service institutions, what digital and analytical initiatives should companies adopt?
Well, if you're talking about banks, we got to look at the future of banking. Brett King, Beyond Banking 4.0, has written extensively about it as well. So we got to start with customer touch points, like we discussed earlier. Somebody graduating from school, what are the sites they're on, health, education, what have you, tourism. And so, like the guy says, banking everywhere except at the bank. So we should be ready to give all kind of lending services at customer touchpoints. Thanks.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Haris from USF. Sir, are you there with us? No. G, can you hear me? Right.
Yeah.
Lovely. So we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm going to ask you to sort of elaborate on the fact that you did mention the kind of impactful work that you're doing. But what is the vision for the future? Let's say, God forbid, another pandemic arises, and right now things are looking peachy, but what is our game plan? What are we preempting? Do we have any measures in place? And then what would be the vision 2025 or 2030 at USF? Thank you.
Okay. I can talk on behalf of USF. What we're looking at is, by 2025, we want every union council to have optic fiber, so they can be connected with high-speed mobile broadband or high-speed fixed line. So the digital infrastructure should be in place, so all the ecosystem around that works to give e-finance, e-health, e-education, that should be in place. That's the idea by 2025 that we do that. And we also, around that, we also make an ecosystem which allow the rural communities to be part of the digital inclusiveness, and they can go for the adoption of digital technology. This is very important because we might have the services there, but we don't have adoption. So I think create awareness and doing a bit of a community building in local content as well, telling them what are the conveniences and how the technology can be efficiently, give better livelihood in the rural areas. So that's what we're looking at, and obviously at an affordable price.
Absolutely. The price points are very important. Thank you very much, sir. And I'm going to ask you to kindly sum up your take on the session today and one takeaway that you would like for the audiences to keep in mind. Mr. Haris, can you hear me?
Talking to me? Yeah.
Sorry.
My one takeaway would be that it's if we have to give the digital ecosystem, so only the government sector cannot just provide it. I think public sector, the private sector, everyone has to join hands and work towards it, and also create an awareness and talk about the benefits more rather than the something which can hamper the growth of technology.
Thank you. Mr. Yusuf Hussain, final takeaway from today.
I think great session, and basic idea in my mind is that technology is our future. And whether it's freelancing, whether it's startups, whether it's VC funds, whether it's digitalization, we got to focus on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Asif Salim, are you still there with us? I guess not. Mr. Khurram Rahat.
So I think something which was earlier mentioned when we talk about this whole digital disruption, digital transformation, the key thing is, and the most important thing is that any digital initiative, if it is not backed by a solid foundation of data and analytics, will not yield the desired results. They may yield some results. So I think one very important element is that when whosoever, whether it's a small company or a large company, if they are embarking upon a digital journey, their success will be really dependent on how well they are able to capture the data, use that data to better understand their customers, their needs, their requirements, transform that into insights which can be used for not only coming up with new products or services or innovative way of reaching out to the customers. And that's where actually IoT also plays a very important role. So data, having a data strategy and using data to the optimum, to me, is the most important thing and the key takeaway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohsen Ali.
So great discussions. I think I appreciate the panelists, great insight. So I would say technology is present, right? And we should not miss the train this time. As a country, we have a lot of potential. If we combine our forces, the policymakers, the implementers, the academia, and the future workforce, if we collectively go in the right path by training our resources in a good manner, using the right technology, maybe a small setup or maybe you are running a huge government corporation, you need technology. And if you're able to adopt these technologies, your progress would be much fast tracked as compared to as previously as you were dealing with the old system. So you need to adopt a lot of system based on the data. So decision making has to be that based on data, as Khurram Sahab rightly mentioned. So data is new oil. So we need to get the right picture using that oil and try to get maximum benefit out of it. And let's have the right decision making for all of us using that data. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
Just like you said.
I'm slightly intervening. बिल्कुल सही बात की मोहसिन साहब ने. The only difference I say is data is not the new oil, because oil is something which is combustible and it
running
is
out.
Whereas data is something which, and the real value of data is, you're able to use it again and again. So Mohsin sir, that's the only thing, but I fully agree otherwise.
I second you. Raj sir.
Absolutely. On that lighter note, I appreciate and thank all you gentlemen for taking out time and being with us today. What we have analyzed from your discussion as well, and also a very important report by the World Economic Forum, is that the future cannot be reimagined without the possibility of multi-stakeholder partnerships. It's what Mr. Harris said. It's what everyone here reiterated. So let's work towards creating in those multi-stakeholder partnerships, and only then can we truly reimagine the future. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. And for the audience, stay tuned. We've got a great session coming up. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Anza. Thank you, CXO Global.
Thank you.